everyone, welcome to Broken Wind Workshop. Back in here still with the clarinet repair part 3. I think there's one more to go in this little clarinet series. And a quick one to say that I'm going to do a Q&A session. I've had so many lovely comments asking different questions about my career and training and clarinet intricacies. So I will do a little short session. So if you have any other questions, please put them in this video or the next one and I will do my best to answer them for you. Next job is to take out all the old pads. Now because this is having a full repad, I don't need to worry about looking at them, which ones are staying or not. We just decided to change them all, so that's nice. For this I use a little repairer's blowtorch here. It looks a bit like the ones you might get to do your creme brulee, and you can change the flame. It's got a temperature control there. Woo! Fire! Do, do, do. So what I need to do is I've got this little, you can see it there, it's a needle spring. It's one of the springs I was telling you about before. This is a slightly longer, bigger one. Before it's been cut to fit, but it's great for poking in and taking the pads out. So you can see here this pad is one of the ones that's broken. It's there, look, that's, whoop, there we go, that was the felt gone. And you can see the skin there and the cardboard underneath. Now what's holding that in is a type of glue. Different companies use different things. You get some, traditionally you use shellac, which is what I'm using here. It comes in a stick, this sort of amber shellac, and it's got a easy melting point to use, so you can drip it on, and then once the pad is in, most importantly, you can heat the back of the key and reposition the pad because it's sort of floating on the shellac. Some companies use like a hot glue type idea, which works okay, but it's not as, I don't think personally it's as easy to play with, to manipulate, because it's just a bit more stodgy, as it were. So I stick with the shellac. It's not the cheapest option, but it's how I was taught to use, and I'm used to working with it, and it's nice and easy to manipulate, as it were. So all I want to do to take all these out, it's a bit hot, is warm up the back of the key. I stick my needle in, so I've got something to hold on to, so I don't need to be poking my fingers around the flame. And you just warm up the back of the key, and it'll pop out. And there you can see this one's been held in with shellac in the past, because you can see it there, the brown. There you go. And now just stick that in the bin. Now all the pads are out, the old ones, there's a little stat here, the outlet. There they go, all the ones that are going in the bin. Get rid of those out my way. And then we need to put the new ones in. So I have all these little tiny trays where I've got the pads organised for each instrument into size order. And I'm going to use my little needle spring. So this is the new pad. You can see there the cardboard at the top, and then it comes down, and the little fatter bit that comes out is the felt. And what I do is I just pierce the skin just in there, so that I can hold the pad on the spring, and it just makes a tiny little hole, which is fine. Normally put that at the back, and it's not a bad thing actually, because when you heat it, it warms up and the air can get in here. It just allows that to sort of escape as well, so it's kind of double whammy of usage. And then fire up the torch. Try and do this in a way my hands aren't in the way so you can see what's happening. So I've got my shellac, and what to do is just hold the pad underneath, and you just drip the shellac onto the back of the pad. There you go. You can see there, just sort of made this tiny little sort of dome of shellac on the back. So what I can now do it solidifies quite quickly, by the way. It's just, you don't want to get molten shellac on your fingers. Done that a few times, rather sore, but now it's cool to touch already, and it's not completely hard yet. It's very brittle stuff, but once it's solidified, but it holds rather well. Anyway, here is the key, and what I do is I just heat inside the little cup. So that's warm enough now to melt the shellac. And I stick the pad in, pull the spring out, and just move it so that it's pushed in there, and the holes at the back. And there we go. One pad in the key. So what I'm going to do now is show you how I go about seating the pads. So we're going to start with this little side key here, and what I do, take the screw out, and I've got in here is some key oil. It's very fine oil with a little like needle on the top, because then I can just drop a little bit in. Less is more. Just want it to help keep things moving quietly. Don't want to be getting oil everywhere, especially not over your fingers. Here, let me move you down a little bit. You can see what. There we go. See what's happening. So I need to make sure this one has a little needle spring here. So I need to make sure that that is pushed back where it needs to be as I put the key on with this one, because the key's so tight to the body you can't put the spring on afterwards. So you need to do it in one motion. And put the screw right back in. There we go. Right, so this having had the cork replaced on it as well, I can now see what effect the new cork's got on the height of the key opening. And you know what? It's actually okay. Not bad at all. I'll know more once I've got the pad in exactly the right place, but it's moving enough for me to be able to get in there and sort the pad out first. So to test, basically, before I explain that, the pad is covering the hole. That's the whole idea of it. The pad completely seals the hole so that when you open that key, obviously it lets the air out and that changes the note. So what you don't want is to have the pad sat slightly squiffy in any way and air's coming out before you want it to. The air should only come out when you actually open the key. And so what we need to ensure is that there's an even seating of the pad all the way around the hole. Now the best way to do that on Clarinet is to use some cleaning papers. These happen to be Yamaha ones, but you can get some different makes, and it's just a very fine sheet of I think paper, really. I don't know what they're actually made of. It's in Japanese, that's helpful. They're paper and they don't have anything on them, any residue. These are often used by players when you're in the middle of playing lots or practicing and that kind of thing, and you get water droplets collect in different places, and the key can start to sound a bit sticky or feel a bit sticky. You can put these in and it absorbs some of the water out and just sort of cleans the surface, because obviously the skin of the pad is so delicate, you don't want anything abrasive going in there. So this is what they're for. But what I do for seating the pads is I just cut this into a feeler gauge. So what I'll do is just slice it with my razor into a triangle. So now I've got the smallest of points at that end and something nice I can hold on to this end. And what I do is I just feel my way round the pad. So here, I'm going to try and show you, that's clearly sticking. The pad is holding it in place, so I know it's touching the hole at that point. Now if I just do the other side, yeah, same there. See, that's sticking there. If I move this to the front, straight out, it's not catching at all. So therefore, I need to move this pad so that the front becomes level with the pad at the front, because it's obviously just touching only at the back. So what I do for that is as I mentioned before, with the shellac you can heat it and then manipulate it, and I have here this little tool which I actually made at uni. This one, it's rather weathered. It's a nice little thin piece that you can just put in and manipulate the pad as you need to. So let's fire this up. You've got to be delicate with this, because the last thing you want is to burn the body, be it a wooden one or the ebonite more student model type ones, where you can sort of almost melt this outside of the ebonite. So you need a really controlled flame. I just heat the back of the pad in the key cup, and that's enough for me to get in and just manipulate the pad to the front. I just do little by little. I let that cool a sec before I poke it again. I don't want to do it too much and find that I've got a big hole at the back. And then we test again. So that's now catching at the front, not tight, but it's catching a bit more. It's catching a bit more on the side there, and the back it still is. Got a bit more about it there. Yeah, catching more there. I can show you what I'm doing on top of my hand. Yeah, so it's better than it was, but it's still not quite right. So we'll go again. Give that a second. And go again. That's better. Let me show you. It's better. It's got some grip about it now. It's catching. And you want it to, one thing is it catching, but you want it to catch evenly all the way around. You don't want one bit where, that's why this is so thin at the end. You want to be able to feel all the way around the pad. I mean, this pad on the Clarinet is only 10mm wide, so you don't want to be having anything too chunky in there. You want to be able to feel all the way around the circumference of it and make sure that it's evenly done. And I think pretty pleased with that. So one done, and I just rub over where I've heated it to make sure it's still nice and clean. And now I can actually look and see if that's opening enough. And I think it's actually quite good. I'll know more when I test it. But it sounds good. You can't really hear the movement much. Just a gentle little knock as it hits, but nothing to worry about. So yeah, happy with that. And then the next ones on the instrument, I go for these side ones. Now these ones are kind of slightly different because they all interconnect. So you've got these two that go into each other, so I'll just put a little drop of oil in. And that will connect in there, like that. And then it's actually easier, you need to put this one on at the same time. They're not actually connected, but they link in. So they need to go on the same time together. There you go, make sure the screws are accessible. And we've got these flat springs here, which I just want to make sure they're tightened in the right spots so they don't turn out and go squiffy, because they've got allocated little slots to fit into on the body. Just want to make sure they're in the right spot. And then what I actually do is put a tiny little piece of grease on the edge of that spring to help it run smoothly, and again not have any added percussion. So just the tiniest bits of, show you there, I've just got a tiny little bit of grease on the end, and I just rub the smallest amount. The last thing you want is to have greasy fingers while you're playing, so you don't want any of this escaping. You don't want too much on there, but it's just enough to take the edge off of metal being on, moving on wood. And then a bit of key oil in there too. And then these three go together, as I say, get the springs in the right places. And these three go together on the side. Ooh, there you go, spring popped out the wrong place, you see. There we go. And get these screws in to hold them in place. There we are. So those three on. Then I need to go and check all the seating of these, but I'll do them one by one, so I'll make sure this one's done and I'll move my way down. Even though I've had to put the keys on together, I still take the time to individually make sure one's right before moving on to the next one.